Hey everyone, welcome to Sewing Shortcut Sunday. I am Nina, your sew guide from Royal Fulani Living Sew School. We are a YouTube channel that is specifically geared towards building the confidence and community of the neurodiverse, newbie, and non-sewer, one creative at a time. And we are here for Sewing Shortcut Sunday live. We've been here for the past few weekends, and each weekend we tackle a beginner sewing tutorial based upon a specific series. So the series that we've been working on are closures, and basically what closures are, it's the thing that allows you to open and close your garment, open and close your jacket, open and close your pant, to be able to step into it, zip it up, button it up, to basically put the garment on and have something that opens and closes to allow you to be able to do that. Specifically, a lot of times with woven garments. So we don't find that often in our knit garments. We can do it in knit garments, but woven garments, fully woven garments, we do need something that opens and closes to allow us to put the garment on. And so that is the best and simplest way that I can explain something like a closure. So we have everything from buttons to zippers to snaps to a range of different closures that allow you to be able to do that. Last week we did snaps, and of course, as you all know, Royal Fulani Living is a lifestyle and fashion brand that is inspired by my bicultural upbringing as a Senegalese and American. And basically, what we do is we create our own original West African prints based upon Senegalese culture, and we apply those prints to everyday products. But we also have Royal Fulani Living Sew School, which is my passion project. I am a 20 plus year fashion educator. I've taught post secondary and secondary educational levels, and I also have 30 plus years as a fashion designer in the fashion industry. So this is my passion project. This YouTube channel is my passion project, and I specifically geared towards those of us with learning differences because I myself am someone who has been struggling with learning in different ways, undiagnosed learning differences, things such as executive functioning, things such as focus and finishing, um, a variety of different things. So multi-step directions, which can be an issue for us as well. So that's why I'm gearing these tutorials towards that. These tutorials are realistic beginner sewing tutorials. We practice everything before we actually put it in the garment. So we work with samples each week just to kind of build your confidence around sewing, build your confidence around doing a specific skill set, and then we will apply it to a garment. So we are here each weekend. Join us, please. We are on every social media platform, Instagram, Facebook. We are everywhere, and we have a series of tutorials for different learners. So we have our live tutorials on Sundays, and then we have our pre-recorded tutorials, which are on YouTube and all of our social media platforms. And then we also have what we like to call our static post or carousel post, which allow you to see the directions, step one, step two, step three, and to see the images as well. So we cater to every single individual who wants to learn how to sew, who is a beginner, who wants to learn how to sew, but we cater to everyone's learning capabilities or how everyone learns. So today, let's get to it. We are going to do a centered zipper application. And what is a centered zipper application? The centered zipper application is basically when you apply a zipper to a garment, a bag, an accessory, home decor, and you use the center of your seam to apply that, and the zipper basically, when you open and close the zipper, it sits directly on the center of your seam. So there's a variety of different zipper applications. There's lap zipper application. There is one that you use for like your jeans. There's what we call a denim or a jean zipper application. So we're going to learn all of those zipper applications. We're going to practice them in samples first so that you know how to apply them to a garment when you're ready to do that. So let's get started. I'm going to switch my screen so we can see our workspace. And here we are. So as you can see, I have a variety of supplies that are with me today. And our basic workspace is, as it always is, always you want to have a flat, clean surface. That's so important. And today we'll just need the basic things that we need each week, which is, of course, our see-through ruler, our fabric scissors, as you can see there, our fabric scissors, you see that. And then you want to have Today we're gonna add a few things. We need our seam ripper, which looks like this, okay? Then we also need, of course, we need some hand sewing needles. Basic ones, any ones, these are Singer, these are like a generic brand that I purchased. Hand sewing needles, of course you need an additional spool of thread, not the one that's actually on your machine. And today we are looking at our actual zipper. Okay, so you'll need a zipper. And as you can see, I have plenty, a lot. As an educator, I keep these. They're good because they're about, I think this might be okay, this is like a 9-inch zipper. Now there are different zippers. This is an all-purpose zipper, which, as you can see, basic metal teeth. I prefer the zippers with the metal teeth. They're just sturdier and they iron better. I find that the ones with the plastic teeth a lot of times melt when you have to use the iron on them. So I prefer the metal teeth zipper. It's a little bit more sturdy. Most of your garments that you find that you purchase for retail are usually metal zippers, which is basic industry standards. So you guys know each week I always reiterate to you, I'm teaching you based upon industry standards. Now, there are other zippers. There are separating zippers. You don't want that one. There are invisible zippers. You don't want that one. We're not there yet, but we will get to that. But today, you just need a basic, everyday, all-purpose zipper. Okay. So, what we want to do is have all our supplies ready. I just believe in like having our supplies ready. All right. So next up, what we want to do is, and I'm just going to move my computer so it's not in the way. And there, like that. I'm going to grab my muslin. Okay. As I always do, as you guys can see, I have my muslin. Okay. Each week we've gone over this. Muslin is basically a basic, inexpensive woven fabric that you can purchase in yardage, in a roll, bolt, that you're supposed to use to basically create prototypes or practice things before you actually get to your final garment, and use of your final fabric. Because what you never want to do is make something directly in your final fabric if you've never done it before. Those of us who are intermediate and advanced, we can skip steps as far as like creating a prototype or creating what you'll hear the word muslin, out of muslin. Creating that prototype as a beginner, I don't encourage you to skip steps. I encourage you to practice it first in a fabric that is similar to or comparable to the fabric that your garment is actually going to be made out of, and execute that thing that you've never done, practice that thing you've never done before in something plain and inexpensive before you execute in your garment. Because what you'll learn is that eventually when you start executing things in your garment, there are mistakes that you make that cannot be fixed. So if you punch a hole in a fabric to make snaps and the hole is wrong, or your snap is incorrectly applied, you have to recut that panel or recut that specific piece. And you don't want to do that. Avoid that. As a beginner, practice first. And practice makes progress, not perfect. So what we want to do is take our muslin, as we always do. We'll need our panels, and I keep it consistent each week because I feel like as someone with learning differences, I need the consistent basics every week. So we always use a 4-inch by 10-inch muslin panel. We need 2 to make a seam. Okay. So I'm going to grab my pencil, number 2, take my see-through ruler, which, I've talked to you all about week after week. Basic beginner, sewing beginner, fashion design supply that you absolutely need. I'm going to take the edge of that. I'm going to measure on my selvage. Remember how important our selvage is. Our selvage is like gold to us in fashion and sample making and sewing, beginning sewing. Don't cut your fabric ever going this way, okay? Because you're cutting your selvage off, and your selvage is that reference that you'll always need in order to measure, cut yardage, line up your patterns, all of that. This is gold. So we don't want to get rid of this. So what I want to do is take my ruler, find the 4-inch mark on my see-through ruler. I want to line that up with the raw edge of my first raw edge there. I'm going to line up that 4-inch mark on my raw edge. I'm going to lay the straight edge of my ruler along my selvage, and I just want to make a small mark, okay? Small mark there, okay? Now, this is what I don't want to do. I don't want to cut up. I want to snip and rip, okay? I want to snip on the mark that I made. And if my fabric is perfectly woven on straight and cross grain, here we go, it'll perfectly rip for me. Ta-da. Okay. We've done this week after week after week. So I'll put my muslin to the side, and I have my panels. I need two 4 by 10 inch panels. So what I just do is take these, put them together, and once again, this is why we need our selvage, because I want to make sure this is cut straight. And we'll talk more about grain as we go on, because grain is so important for beginner sewers. It's so important for accurate cutting, accurate sewing, accurate fitting. When things lay on the body, if they're not properly cut on grain, they can feel wonky or strange on the body or twisted. And that all has to do with how something is cut. Okay. So I usually pin my selvages together like so. And I really should have my mat here. I don't have that. I'm actually working on another project for a I'm not going to tell you guys what it is. It's a little bit of a secret. I'll announce it when it goes through, but I'm using that mat for a different project. So what I want to do is I want to smooth this out, okay? And I want to put a pin there. And let me just get my daughter involved. Liv, can you hand me the purple mat that's over there? The purple cutting mat that's right there? My little assistant. So I'm going to cut this because this is my dining room table. So I don't want to mess up my dining room table. So what I want to do is just take this and thank you, my beautiful assistant. You're welcome. So I want to lay this here, make sure I'm cutting on top of this just to protect my table. And then what I want to do is I want to measure from my selvage up 10 inches because I want these two panels to be 4 by 10 inch. Okay. And I want to make a line. Come on there. Okay, make sure it's accurate. And as I shared with you all before, I was clueless on how to read a ruler in grade school and high school. So until I got to college and saw this specific ruler, because the old school rulers were wooden with a little metal lip or ledge, I did not understand how to read a ruler. But as I through design school, once I had this ruler and I could actually, someone explained to me, you count over 4 boxes and 4 boxes and a half an inch, and you count over another 4 and that's an inch. So once I understood it and it was explained to me in a certain way, I got it. But I never understood how to read a ruler in grade school. Just the way my brain worked, it just never computed for me that how half an inch was, where was a quarter of an inch, an eighth of an inch. It's like, okay, half of one is half, and then half of half is a quarter, and then half of a quarter is an eighth. I didn't understand any of that until I was in college, and I had this ruler, and someone actually explained it to me in very fundamental, basic terms in a way that I could understand, being someone who really struggled with numbers and math throughout my educational time. So what I want to do is measure it up 10. I want to cut the line that I actually made here with my fabric scissors, of course. Okay, remember we talked about our fabric scissors are gold. Don't let your family use these to cut flowers and paper and everything else. Put these away, hide these, because you should have a separate pair of scissors that are just for cutting fabric. Don't let them be interchanged for anything else, okay? So I have my panels cut. I got my pins, got my 4 by 10 inch panel, 10, 4, just checking, okay? Now what I want to do is what we've always done. I want to sew a 1-inch seam, okay? I want to sew a 1-inch, I want to sew a seam with 1-inch seam allowance. Let me change that. I want to sew a seam using 1-inch seam allowance. So let's switch our views, go to my machine, okay? And let's plug old girl in. So there we go. And as you can see, it's already set up. I have my handy dandy thread nippers, flippers. And what I want to do is I want to stitch this down at 1-inch seam allowance. Remember, each week we talk about should I use pins to sew? Shouldn't I use pins? It depends on your confidence level. As your confidence in sewing builds, you will actually probably not need the pins. Okay, but you can slide one pin in at the top if you need it. Okay, slide one pin in at the top if you need it, just to keep your edges of your top together. I want to insert this into the machine. Remember, my 1 inch seam allowance is always 1 inch to the right or to the left from my needle at its center position. So my needle is in the center position on the machine. The center position means my needle can either go far left or far right. There's a mechanism on your machine that changes that, but my needle is in the center position. If I measure and take my ruler and I go over to the right there and measure 1 inch to the right, there's a marking that's there that tells me this is where my 1 inch seam allowance is. What I want to do is take the raw edges of my sample, line up the raw edges of my sample with that marking on the machine that tells me this is where 1 inch is, and I want to insert my sample. The top of my sample, I want it to sit right before my needle, right before my needle, okay? So, under here, I'm gonna just bring this down a little, get it up better. Here we go. Raw edge lined up with my 1 inch marking, okay, and I want to lower my foot, okay. I may remove the pin before, okay, and really, to be honest with you, I'm just gonna turn this around because I always want the thinner part of my point of my needle to run underneath the machine needle, not the thicker part, because the thicker part will have a tendency to break my needle if I want to actually run over my pin as I'm sewing. So raw edge, 1 inch seam allowance marking, lining that up. The top of my sample is sitting right in front of where my needle is going to come down. Line that up and press down on my pedal, get my machine started, and stitch down a little. And of course, always start with the back stitch and end with the back stitch, okay? Back stitch is just your reverse feed. So you want your machine to go reverse a couple steps, couple stitches, and then go forward a couple stitches. That ties off or finishes off your seam. So if you don't back stitch when you start and back stitch when you end, your seam will eventually start to come undone while the person's wearing it or while you're applying another piece. So you want to make sure you back stitch when you start, back stitch when you end. So I back stitch. I want my raw edges of my sample to be laying directly on top of each other. Okay, raw edges of my sample laying on top of each other, and I want those raw edges to line up with my 1 inch seam allowance mark on my machine, lining up the raw edges of my sample with my 1 inch seam allowance guide on my machine. Okay, this is where you have to practice sewing straight. This is what a lot of times some sewing tutorials, beginner sewing tutorials, I will say, there needs to be more of a focus on just sewing a straight line because everyone doesn't know how to do that. Everyone doesn't know how to hold the fabric straight. So this allows you to practice. Practicing in the samples allows you to practice just sewing straight, just controlling the speed of the machine. That doesn't happen right away. You have to learn that, okay? Raw edges of my sample lined up with my 1 inch seam allowance guide on my machine. Making sure my raw edges are laying on top of each other. And back stitch, okay? Lift my foot of my machine, take my hand, my right hand, put it on my hand wheel, which is on the right side of the machine. Manually lift my needle from out of my sample, pull my sample to the left, take it out, okay? So this is where my nippers come in handy. Always give yourself a lead of thread. Don't ever cut your thread to the quick because then it'll unthread the eye of your needle and you'll have to go back and do that. So try to avoid the little pitfalls that could slow you down as a beginner, okay? Let's go back to our workspace, okay? Here's our workspace. And I'm gonna just move these things out of the way. Don't need that. And I'm gonna put my portable sewing, portable pressing board in place, ironing board in place. As you can see, I'm gonna make sure I'm centered. There we go. Okay. Have my sample. Okay. What do we talk about each week? We always talk about cleaning up your threads while you sew. Okay. Don't wait until your garment or your sample is complete to go back and start cleaning up your threads. You don't want to do that. You want to make sure that you're cleaning while you go so you don't forget anything. The worst thing that can happen is your garment's walking down the runway and there's threads hanging out from the bottom because you just didn't clean it while you're doing it. You try to do it at the end when the garment is completed. Take those precautions while you're sewing. So I want to first lay this flat and open, seam allowance facing up. And I want to first press it with my fingers. Then I want to grab my iron. And the conversation that we have about irons every week is get whatever one you can afford. Just make sure it functions well. Just make sure it makes steam. That's all you need. This is a Hamilton Beach. I've used this in the fashion educational space for years. It's a good iron. It makes good steam. It's good with pressing. Get what you can afford. You don't have to get the expensive fancy iron. Just get something that you can afford. Get something that just functions properly. So I want to make sure, of course, in order for it to make steam, my iron has to be filled up with water to the max fill line, and just going to test it, make sure it's making good steam. It is. I'm pressing and opening my sample with my fingers, taking my iron, starting with the tip, and pressing my sample flat and open. Press my seam allowance flat and open. Then I want to not just do the interior, which is the side with the seam allowance. I want to make sure the exterior is properly pressed too. Because sometimes what will happen is you don't look at the exterior of the garment or exterior of your sample. Things like this can happen where that's pressed in place. You don't know it until you actually go back to the machine and go to sew again. So I want to not just properly press my interior. I want to press my exterior as well. Okay. And what I'll say is this: accurate sewing, accurate pressing, accurate pattern making all work together to make a garment that is retail worthy. For those of you who want to sew and sell, or who want to be in the fashion entrepreneurial space and you are making your own samples, you want the quality of your sewing to be top tier, okay? So that you can properly charge what you need to charge for that specific garment, home decor, accessory, handbag, whatever it is. Make sure that your sewing capability is based upon industry standards and is top tier. Okay, so we have it all pressed. I'm just going to move this out of the way, move my iron out of the way, and I want to grab my pins. Okay, and I want to grab my zipper. Here it is. Okay, now let's talk about zipper anatomy. Okay, because you'll hear the terminology frequently in your space as a fashion entrepreneur. If you're sewing to sell, that's fine, but you want to know what the fundamentals and basics and terminology is that corresponds with your garment, that corresponds with the things that you're using and the different skill sets that you're building as a beginner sewer. So here's our zipper. This is our zipper pull, and allows us to open and close the zipper. This is our zipper stop. That's that small metal piece that's on the bottom that keeps our zipper pull from coming off. And then we're like, oh shoot, my zipper's done. It's a wrap. Okay. So we have our zipper pull, our zipper stop, zipper tape. Okay. And of course, teeth. Okay. So pull, stop, tape, teeth. Okay. And of course, you all know when I do lives, I actually go back and do a small, quick, simple tutorial, pre-recorded tutorial based upon the live, so you can go back and make reference to that when you need to, instead of having to go through the whole live and find the part that you need to understand how to do that specific thing. I take those lives, I break them down, I pre-record them again, and then I upload them to the YouTube space for Royal Fulani Living Sew School. So you'll have either one. If you want to go through the live again, that's fine as a replay. If you want to look at the pre-recorded one, which just goes right into the actual skill set, whichever one you need, whatever type of learner you are, we are there to provide which specifically what you need as a learner. Okay. So once again, we have the pull, we have our tape, zipper teeth, and we have a stop here, and we can't forget the stop there. So that keeps the zipper from coming off. Okay. What we want to do now is I want to take my zipper. I want my muslin sample to be facing the wrong side, or I want to be able to see my seam allowance. Seam allowance facing up. I want to take my zipper. I want to open it. I want to lay my zipper facing down. Okay. Don't do this. This is a mistake that's often made by beginners as well. They actually have this, they're seeing the zipper facing up. You don't want to do that. You want your seam allowance sample to be facing up. You want to see your seam allowance, and you want your zipper to be facing down. Okay. So I want to take the top of my zipper tape, that excess, and I want to line it up with just my seam allowance. Okay. So let's do that again. A common mistake of beginners is also having this facing the wrong way. I want this to face down. Okay. And then I want to just have my seam allowance available. I take my seam allowance, hold this and make everything go to the opposite side. Okay. So a good way of remembering that is if I hold my sample this way, okay, hold my seam allowance and my zipper tape together, okay, my seam allowance stays on the right, everything else goes to the left. Okay, that's a good way to remember as well. All right. What I want to do is make sure this pinked edge is lining up with the edge or raw edge or top of my sample. The reason being is because you don't want to do this, because then remember, if this is a pair of pants, your waistband has to attach to this. You don't want to cover the seam allowance that your waistband has to attach the garment on. So I want to line up the top raw edge of my sample. I want to make sure that my zipper teeth are lining up with my seam, okay? Not overlapping them, but just lining up with them. I want to take a few pins and insert the pins, get this in place, go all the way down. And you're not going to be sewing with these pins, so don't worry about, how they're going into the sample. So here, and go all the way down. And there, okay. Then what I want to do is zip this back up, carefully zip this back up. I want to do the same thing, okay. I want seam allowance to the right, seam allowance and zipper tape to the right, everything else to the left, okay. And I want to pin this in place. Now, I know this is accurately laying in the right space because I've already pinned my other side. So all I need to do now is pin this side to make sure it stays in place. Okay. Now, as beginner sewers, what I encourage you to do is basting with hand sewing. Basting is going to be your friend. Okay. Hand sewing and basting is going to be your friend. Don't think, okay, well, I want to get through this fast and I want to hurry up and get the garment done. No, baste if you need to baste, which is hand sewing something in place, quickly hand sewing something in place so that it's accurate. Okay. Now, don't forget, I'm not actually pinning through the entire piece. I'm just pinning through the seam allowance. See? So you don't want to pin to this. You just want to pin to your seam allowance. Then what I want to do is I have a hand needle already prepped and ready to go. Okay, some thread, as you can see. And I just want to baste and no, you don't have to worry about it being neat and accurate. Just go right up, and usually what I do is I do it in a quick way. Do some big basting stitches, go all the way up. Okay. If you feel like you can confidently do it without the basting, go for it, because you're just practicing, okay? So if you want to build your confidence without the basting, absolutely positively go for it, because you're just doing it in a sample and you're practicing. So I encourage you to, as you build your confidence in sewing, if you feel like you don't need the basting stitch, don't do the basting stitch. But for those of you who've never sewn before, basting stitches will be your friend, because otherwise what happens is if you don't use the basting stitch and you take your pins out, that particular piece is going to either shift or move while you're sewing it, and then you're going to see it's not accurately sewn, it's not sewn straight, or it's not on the right, sewn on the right line. So I caught my needle, one of my pins, take that out, and as you can see, it only took me about 60 seconds, maybe a minute, just to put all this in place, baste all the way up there, because I want to be able to pull this out at the end. Okay, so my fabric scissors, cut. Okay, same thing on the other side, and just a single thread, not double, just single. Same thing. Okay, doesn't have to be neat, doesn't have to be perfect. Just get it basted down so you don't have to worry about it shifting or moving while you're sewing. Okay, and I do this very quickly. Just baste it. How wide should your basting stitches be? Mine are about 1/2 inch stitch length, and then about 1/4 inch apart. So stitch length means how long the stitch is, and then width is how far they are apart. Okay, so it's about 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch apart. No, you don't need to do them really, really teeny tiny small. No, because this is going to come out. We're just getting this to stay in place. So I'm just hand stitching this up, hand stitching it in place. Take my neat pins out as I go up. As you see, took me how many minutes? Maybe one, maybe two. So don't skip steps. As a beginner, if you need to hand stitch, hand stitch. Okay. I want to remove that anxiety and that feeling of I gotta get it done, and I gotta get it done now, and I want to see how it looks in the end. The more time you take, and taking your time as a beginner sewer, the more one, in love you fall with sewing, two, and the better your outcome of your final garment. So take the proper steps to be able to basically create the best, or build an arsenal or skill set so that you can make anything. All right, and that's done. And as you can see, I don't want to pull it. I'm lightly just, it's not tight, it's real loose, because I want to be able to pull this out at the end. Okay, and I'm not tying it off, just a single thread there, cut that off, and drop my hand needle onto my handy dandy magnetic pin cushion. Okay, and here's what it looks like right now. Okay, everything's in place. I basted the tape of my zipper to my seam allowance on both sides, right and left. And now what I want to do is I'm going to go back to my machine. Okay, here I am at my machine again, and here's my sample. I'm gonna pull back just a little. Still trying to get all of this technical stuff down. So I'm getting better each week, but trying to learn as I go, build a plane while flying it, and then at the same time add additional things each week that allow me to get better and better and better at presenting lives to you all. So as you can see, it's all basted in place. Okay. Now, what I want to do is this. See my foot? Okay. And I just want to encourage you. On the Royal Fulani Living Sew School page, there is a unboxing of a brand new sewing machine tutorial that we uploaded months ago. In that tutorial, it will tell you everything you need to know about every foot and supply that came with your machine. And one of the things that we discussed your zipper foot. Okay, and it looks like this. So we need a zipper foot to apply our zipper. And if you look at the Royal Fulani Living Sew School channel, you will see a unboxing video tutorial of a brand new Singer 4411, which is the machine that I highly recommend as a fashion educator to beginner sewers. It is the machine that I used vastly in every single classroom that I set up. So when I go in as a fashion educator, I set up my own studio, set up my own space, order the machines, everything from A to Z, the cutting tables, so that my students' studio space is properly set up based upon industry standards, and it's set up like a space would be in a factory or a space would be in a design studio in the fashion industry. So as you can see, the only difference is I think I start with home sewing machines because it's easier for a student to grasp that an industrial sewing machine can be fast, it can be intimidating, and I want to build the confidence of your sewing first. So here we have our zipper foot, which of course we talked about in our unboxing tutorial. And what I want to do is I want to drop my straight stitch foot, which is on the machine currently. I want to drop that. The way that I do that is right, if I take my hand, I slide my hand along the edge and I go up to the back of where my foot is attached. There's a small lever. I press that lever and it drops my foot. It drops it and I can move that out of the way, okay? And then I can attach my zipper foot. Now, look at your zipper foot. There are two sides. There is this side and this side. The reason being is because you have a right zipper tape and a left zipper tape. You have zipper tapes. When you sew it down, you can't use your foot has to alternate sides to be able to sew either the right zipper tape or the left zipper tape. So that's why you see it has a right and a left side. So I'm going to insert this into whichever one you choose first, and I want to insert my foot, my zipper foot, underneath the machine. There's a small shank here. There's an indentation. I want to line up that indentation with the bar that is here that runs across my zipper foot, and I want to lower my foot onto that and press and pop, okay? You'll get to know this as you use your machine more, you'll get to understand it. Of course, it is in your manual, and we will do this week after week when we go through a different skill set of having to use various machines. Yes, my threads still do go to the back of the machine. Now, this is a little tricky. I want it to sit underneath the foot. And there we go. And that's just that. Beeping is my iron. I always say keeps the house from burning down. It goes off automatically. So now what I want to do is look at my sample. Okay, here's my sample, and I want to have my sample in front of me. Try to keep my basting threads out of the way. I want to take my zipper. Okay, either I'm looking at what I'm starting on this side because I need the edge of the foot to line up with my zipper teeth. I need the edge of the foot, so it can't be over here. It has to be, I'm starting with this side, okay? So what I want to do is, I want to just make sure my zipper pull is facing up. I'm going to work this down just a little, work it down like that, okay? Keep my basting in place. And I want to take my tape, grab my tape and my zipper tape and my seam allowance. I want to hold that with my hands. I want to keep this to the left and make everything else go to the right. Okay, let's do that again. I don't want to completely go through the sample. I want to hold this in place like so. I want to grab my zipper tape, and as it's basted down to my seam allowance, I want to hold that. I want that to stay to the left. I want everything else to go to the right. Okay, I want to lift my foot, my zipper foot. I want the edge of my zipper foot, which is back here, not here, but here, to line up with the side of my teeth. Okay, so I want to line up the edge of my zipper foot, not here, back here. I want to line that up with the edge of my teeth. As you can see, kind of like there. Okay, so I want to a little bit in there. Okay, and I want to start, and the way I inserted this is, yes, I did go a little bit further in than what I would do with my regular sample. I can get a little bit further back, but I'm there, because I want to be right on top of the sample, and I want to start on the edge. I want to be right on top of the sample, okay, because this is my first stitch. There's a couple stitches you have to make. So, and of course, start and back stitch. The back stitch allows you to kind of go back. Then I want to make sure the edge of my foot is lined up with my teeth. Okay. As I get down here and I get closer to my pull, what's going to happen is this: if you don't adjust your pull, your zipper foot can't go around that and it'll make this weird C shape and go out. You don't want that. So what I want to do is stop my machine. I want to sink my needle into my sample. I want to lift my zipper foot. Okay, and I'm going to manipulate this and pull it up. Pull it back up, all the way up. Okay, then I'm going to lower my foot again. I don't want any issues with any type of curvy lines, okay? And keeping the edge of my foot lined up, and you'll see it kind of wedges and sits perfectly in there. What I always say about using a zipper foot is it does the work for you. That's the funny thing about a zipper foot. It does the work for you. And also what you could look at, because I'm right-handed, I always look to the right. But if you're left-handed, you could also look at this. See how this edge of the foot is lining up with that? That's another thing I just noticed. Okay. I'm learning every day too, even with 20 plus years of fashion education experience. I love to still learn different skill sets. Okay, I'm gonna go all the way out, and I want to reverse stitch and go out. You don't have to go all the way out on the edge of the sample. Just make sure you're going over your zipper tape. I want to lift my foot, manually rotate, lift my needle, take my sample out to the left. Okay. Once again, leave a lead for your threads and snip. Okay. Then I want to do it again. But I want to do this. I want to drop my foot. Boom. I want to switch sides. This side. Pop it in. Okay. And now I did one side. I want to do the other side. So this side is in place. Stitch down to the seam allowance, perfectly aligned. Okay. Now I want to do the opposite side. Same thing, you all. Same thing. I want to lay my sample flatten in front of me. I want to grab the seam allowance and zipper tape of whatever side is not completed, whatever side is not stitched down. I'm going to hold this to the right. Everything else goes to the left. So remember, our first one was that went to the left and everything else went to the right. Now we're doing this is on the right, everything else is on the left. Same procedure. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Wiggle your pull down slightly. Okay. Insert your sample partly into the machine. Make sure the edge of your zipper pull, your zipper foot on the other side lines up with your zipper teeth. Lower your foot. Start sewing. Got a little bit of a back stitch a little. Making sure the edge of my foot is lining up with my tape. Okay. Something I see what happened. So I'm a person who always kind of takes advantage of a mistake. So see how when I started stitching the loop, my thread was not on the proper side. So my thread was still on this side going to the back. And see how I created a loop over top of the foot, which was restraining the foot. So all I want to do is take that and gonna start again. Okay. As a beginner, I want you to always remember it's okay for you to start again. You're not going to get it right the first time. So I just recognize that mistake right off the bat, fixed it, cut it off. Okay. And once again, starting over, I'm going to give myself a lead, make sure everything's good. Now I want to make sure I do it right this time. My thread should be on the side that I'm sewing. Okay. Here we go. And inserting this into the machine. Lower my foot. I want to start at the top. Okay, and back stitch a little. Okay, and then I want to move forward. As I get to where my zipper pull is, what I want to do is come down. Okay, lower my needle into my sample. Lift my zipper foot. Okay, your needle has to be in the sample for your sample not to shift or move. Zip it up. Okay, the reason being is because you won't be able, your zipper foot won't be able to go past this properly. It will be wonky. It will make a weird shape. You don't want that. So you have to use that procedure to make sure your line is perfect and straight. And I want to continue. The edge of my zipper foot is lining up with my teeth. Remember, trying to keep everything to the left and keep my sample to the right. Now, what I always say about the zipper foot is it does the work for you. Once it lines up, the edge of this lines up with your teeth, it basically, you're just guiding it. It does the work for you. All the way up, out and down. And I want to back stitch. Then lift my foot, manually raise my needle, pull my sample out into the left. Okay, and snip my, and I want to go to my station, my prepping station, my ironing station. I want to look at my sample. Okay, see all of these threads. This is where we got to clean up. Okay, because this will start to get confusing and get caught in certain areas that you don't want it to get caught in. So I clean this up. Yes, I can pull my basting stitch out. Okay. The one thing I want to say is if you go to pull your basting stitch out and you feel like it's sticking because the threads are going over top of it, here's where our handy dandy seam ripper comes into place. Okay. Here's your seam ripper. Okay. If you feel like your threads are not, like I'm pulling this and it's not giving the way I want it to give, I just take my seam ripper and I seam rip that. Because what happens is sometimes you accidentally stitch over the actual basting stitch and it just stabilizes it. So see, there we go. Pull that right out. Okay. I want to do the other side. Take your basting stitch out. If you forget to take it out, it's not a big deal. I feel like it's, I've seen actually retail samples sometimes where they forgot to take, the basting stitch out. And that's fine. It's not the end of the world. I try to make my basting stitch a different color than my actual thread I'm using for my sample. That's just me. Okay. And just want to be careful not to seam rip my actual stitches that I need. There we go. Pull that out. Boom. As you can see, took out my basting stitch. Anything else you see that needs to be cleaned up, clean it up. Okay. We are not done. So we are not done. So we have, as you can see, we have our zipper stitched down just to our seam allowance, which is what we need, just to our seam allowance. Okay, don't worry about your stitching being perfect right now. That's not a big deal. Okay, so what I want to do now is look at my wrong side, and this frame drives me crazy sometimes, and I like to get rid of it, but I know it's just the nature of the beast of what the fabric does. So here we go. I have this done. I want to flip it over. Okay, flip it over. Okay, what I want to do is I need my markings for my final stitch. My final stitch is the stitch that goes through and through. Okay, so what it does is it basically not only creates a beautiful, this stitch has to be perfect because it's something that is seen on the outside of the garment, seen on the outside of your home decor or your clutch bag you're making. It has to be perfect. So the inside you can kind of get away with if you make a mistake here and there, it's not going to show. But this seam, this stitch line that you're making has to be perfect. Okay. So what I want to do for my sample, normally what I'll do is I will do, because I'm just working in muslin, I'll take my ruler. I need to make sure that wherever my line is, I'm catching my exterior, seam allowance, and zipper tape. So before we just caught seam allowance and zipper tape, now we need exterior, seam allowance, and zipper tape. That's where we're going through and through, what we call sewing through and through. So I want to feel around, find my zipper pull. There it is, okay? And I'm actually actually going to use my mechanical pencil because it's sharper and it gives me more accuracy than my number 2 pencil. Number 2 pencil is good for just general pattern making, drawing, but when I need something that's going to give me a sharper line, I always grab my mechanical pencil. So I'm going to find my stop is there. I can feel it through there. I want to be 1/4 of an inch up from my stop. Don't stitch below that, because what you want to do is you want your stop to be hidden when the zipper is open. You want your stop to be hidden. So I can feel my stop there, okay? I take my ruler, and sometimes if I can't remember where it is, I'll take a pin, a straight pin. I'll grab a straight pin, look underneath, run a straight pin through the top of where my stop is so I know where my line's going to be drawn. So see there? Okay, run a straight pin through that. So I want to be 1/4 of an inch up from that. And I want to just give myself a line that goes like that. Right across there, using my ruler, of course. No freehand drawn lines unless you're fashion illustrating. Okay, and we just uploaded a small tutorial, quick tutorial about fashionaries. I shared that with you all yesterday and the day before. A fashionary is basically like a fashion sketchbook, dictionary, diary. It already has the templates made so that you can draw over top of them, so you don't have the anxiety of having to know how to draw a body, even though that is a skill set that you want to have eventually. But if you want someplace to get your ideas, your fashion ideas out quick, fast, and in a hurry, fashionary is where it's at. Okay, so I measured up 1/4 of an inch from where my stop is. I put a mark there, and now I want to measure out. I want to see how far out, because I want to be able to catch everything. I want to be about 3/8 of an inch. I just want to make sure that's accurate. Boop. Start going a little further there, okay. So 3/8 of an inch from my seam line. So I'm measuring 3/8 of an inch from my seam line, and I'm making sure it's laying on there, going all the way up and all the way down. So, and then I just want to make small marks here, and I want to check and make sure that mark is going through all 3 layers. So what I do usually is slow down. I take a pin and I run a pin through that mark to see what that mark, if I sew there, what is it catching? Is it catching everything? Is it catching some of it? Because I want all 3 layers to be sewn together. And it's right on the edge. And if I don't get it, it's not really a big deal, okay? So, but I don't want to be too close and too far off. So I'm going to actually go erase that out. That's why I love making a sample before I actually execute it in my final one. I'm going to do 1/4 of an inch, okay? Because I feel like 1/4 of an inch would be a bit better. So I want to go here. And remember, my 1/4 of an inch marking on my ruler is laying on my seam line, and I'm making small marks going up. Okay, my 1/4 of an inch marking is laying on my seam line, and I'm making small markings, not straight lines, but small markings going all the way up. Okay, and here, and going all the way up, up, up. There. Okay, I need that because I need to have a line to stitch on, okay? Then I want to do the opposite side. I want these 2 lines to connect, okay? Because I need to make a pivot. I'm going to pivot there. So I need those 2 lines to actually connect. So just making sure that these 2 are touching and they're making a right angle, because I need them to connect. I'm going to pivot there. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm finding my 1/4 of an inch marking on my ruler, which is there, laying that 1/4 of an inch mark on my seam line, and there, and then I want to start doing the same thing I did on the other side with my mechanical pencil, nice sharp dotted lines, nice and accurate, up, all the way up, and here, this went out a little bit, okay. That's why I love making samples first, because the sample allows me to see some of the mistakes that I've made. And also what it allows me to do is it allows me to go back and fix things. And then when I make it in my final garment, I don't have to worry about, oh gosh, what did I do? I don't remember what I did. Okay. So I want to make sure these two, and I'm a little bit further down. I don't want that to be there because I don't want to get confused. Erase that out. Okay, and so now I have my stitch line, my exterior stitch line here, across, and up. Okay, and I want it to be perfect. All right, so what I'm going to do next is this. Remember how our zipper pull was kind of in the way and we didn't want it to be in the way? What I want to do is I want to pull this, push this down like I did before I get to my machine, because I don't need that to be in the way while I'm stitching. Okay, so pull this down a little bit more so it can be nice and flat. And now what I want to do is head to my machine. Let me switch screens. There we are. And I need to change my foot back to my regular foot. I just need my regular foot for this, okay? Now, can you use the zipper foot for this? Yes. I prefer to use my straight stitch regular foot for this. It works with either or. And I find that my larger zippers, like my separating zippers that I put on outerwear jackets, a lot of times require me to use the zipper foot to do this last step. So my last step is I want to insert my sample into the machine. I want to lower my foot and I want to take my time. I'm going to stitch on the line. Stitch on the line. So I want to start my machine, back stitch a little, nice and clean. And I want to take my time. And I'm trying to sew right on the line. Just take your time. Okay, now what I'm gonna do is this. Once I get to, I can feel my zipper pull there. Again, I'm going to lower my needle into my sample, lift my foot. I'm going to manipulate my zipper pull. Up a little. And just get this to slide back up. Just takes a little bit more manipulation because it's underneath. And I got my pull. It's precarious, but you have to do it. And this is the part a lot of times that is difficult to do. There we go. Up. Okay. Sometimes also what I'll do is I'll show you guys that trick on the other side. I have another trick that I use to get that to behave. So I want to continue sewing nice and straight. Okay, as I advance to this lower portion, which is where my angle is, what I want to do is this. I want to change my stitch length to something small. Change it to 2. It was on 4. So I'm going to change it to something small, and I want to slowly go. Slowly. Very slowly. Slow. Because I want to hit a certain mark, okay? And I don't want to go past it. Slowly. And here. And go right into the corner. Boom, I nailed it, okay? So what I did was I basically changed my stitch length to something smaller so I could have more control in pivoting, because that's what I'm about to do. So I sink my needle into the corner of my sample. Corner looks like that, but it's on the other side. Sink my needle in, lift my foot, rotate my sample, I'm going to go across, okay? So let me show you that again, all right? Sink my needle right into the corner, lift my foot, rotate my sample, and I just pivoted, what they call pivoting, and I want to lower my foot, and I want to go across. Keep your stitch length something small. Keep your stitch length small, okay? Because you want control here. You want to have control here. And yes, you're going to go across your zipper tape. It's going to go right through. You're not going to have any issues at all. Go nice and slow. And nice and slow. And I want to get right into that corner. That's where I want to be, okay? Sink your needle into the corner of your sample. I want to lift my foot. I want to pivot again, okay? And I want to lower my foot and adjust my stitch length a little. Keep it on 2, okay? All right, I can see already. See, I just wanted to show you all that. I can see already that I've pivoted, okay? So I pulled that out a little bit too far. I want to go back and just go over that again. Be where I need to be. There. Okay. And I want to stitch up. And then I want to increase my stitch length as I'm going up. Take your time. I want to increase my stitch length as I'm going up. Okay. See the sample. Increase my stitch length as I go up. Just take your time. Okay, and then what I want to do is this. As I get to the top, see this, okay? There's my bump again from my zipper pull. I want to lower my needle into my sample. I want to lift my foot. I want to reach under again and manipulate, push this down. Past my foot. There we go. If you have a good zipper, you're not going to have any issues with pulling it or pushing it down or pulling it up while you're doing this. So I want to go all the way out and back stitch, remove my sample and lift my foot, raise my needle, and pull my sample out to the left, give myself a lead, okay, cut it, go back to my workspace, okay, and here we are, okay. Now, I'm a perfectionist. I can see a lot of the little imperfections, okay? So I will go back and fix those. But for now, what I'm gonna do is clean this up. Somebody might be like, wow, that looks good. Well, I think as you start to sew, you are going to recognize, okay, where you need to make corrections, okay? And that's the mark of just someone who wants to get good, okay? So as you can see, finish my sample. And then here's a little trick. Sometimes what I'll do is, just to avoid the imperfections, I'll do my top stitch color the same color or similar color to my fabric, okay? What I want to do now is seam rip open my sample. And what I'm doing is I'm seam ripping my first stitch line. Remember my first stitch line, which I did to actually close my seam to be able to sew? I'm seam ripping that open carefully. Okay, there, right? And going all the way down as well. Take your time. You don't want to rip into the fabric either. So I just kind of pull it open. It's the easier way to do it, because the seam ripper can rip into your fabric. Here's my pull. I want to seam rip this, that, and now I can see right now there's a little bit of an imperfection, like with my distances of my final stitch line. That's why I have the sample. The sample helps me figure out, okay, what can I do better the next time? Okay, sewing, practicing sewing and making the samples makes progress. Okay, so I can see right now where I have a little bit of a distance, maybe like a 1/16 of an inch difference of where my stitch lines are on the right and left. It's bothering my eye because I'm just, that's just me. So as you can see, I seam ripped open my original stitch line. Clean this up, like get rid of these threads that are there, because you don't want that when you're opening. So I clean this up, and here, okay. And once again, this is how you would insert and execute a center zipper application for anything. It doesn't have to be a garment, for anything. So I'm cleaning these threads up and pull them out. Once I seam rip them, I want to clean them out. Just getting rid of all of them. Go, and here, and zip. Okay, see, this is what I needed. I needed that stitch line, the final stitch line, to be catching everything. It needed to be catching all 3 layers, see? Okay, so one of the things you want to make sure, it doesn't matter how beautifully sewn it is, does it work? Okay, so that's our thing. Does it work? At the end of it all, does it work? Center up, down, it works. This could be on the edge of the sleeve that you're making. The thing I love about zippers and closures is that you can use them more for design details than functionality. So a lot of times, like our average function for a zipper is a pair of pants, a skirt, a pillow covering, or a bag. But you could use these more in decorative and functional ways. So if I have a sleeve and I'm using this on the end of the sleeve and my sleeve is really, really fitted and it's not a stretch fabric, I could actually execute a zipper on that sleeve to make it so that when the person is putting on, and I still want it to be nice and fitted, not tight, but fitted on the person's body, I add this zipper on the end of the sleeve so that I can open it, the person gets into it, and then we zip it back down. So there's so many ways you could use closures like a zipper to add an element of surprise or an element of interest to your design. So don't just think of them as functional things to open and close to get in and out of a garment. That is number 1. But there's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different ways you could use this as a design element to create interesting design. Okay, so once again, just to give you guys an overview, we are Royal Fulani Living Sew School. We are here every single Sunday for Sewing Shortcut Sunday. We're here sometimes for Sewing Shortcut Saturday. Today we did a center zipper application, which you could use pretty much in any type of garment, any type of product, bags, home decor. And we have our YouTube channel. We are on Instagram. We are on Facebook. We are on Threads. We're on TikTok. We're on Pinterest. So you can find us pretty much anywhere, whatever suits your fancy. I know some prefer not to be on Facebook. Some prefer Instagram. We are everywhere. And our pre-recorded tutorials based upon whatever we've done live for that week are always up during the week. So you can find them there. If you can't join us live, we absolutely have our replay, and we absolutely have our pre-recorded step-by-step tutorials for how to do that specific skill that we learned that week. Once again, I am Mina. I'm your sew guide each week, and I am a 20-plus year fashion educator, 30 years in the fashion industry, and I will be with you here each week. This is my passion project. We are Royal Fulani Living Sew School. We are building a community and the confidence of the neurodiverse, newbie, and non-sewer, one creative at a